And welcome to this Tuesday's Bridge Show. Welcome back everybody from Easter. Oh, I hope you had a beautiful holiday. At least here in Norway, we've been skiing, sunbathing. Actually, we've been in the city the whole week. But, well, for you guys that's been traveling, good for you. But, with no further ado, let the show begin. And here we are live from our IP studio in Oslo, HQ of Bridge Technologies, in our basement where we have our long-renowned studio. It's Tuesday again, and today we have a remarkable guest. If I tell you networks, that is actually his middle name. It is one of the world's leading advocates and also experts on all things networking from the renowned company ARISTA. This is Robert Welch. Robert, welcome.
Thanks, Simon. I think you give me way too much credit. You know, we all stand on the shoulders of others, and being at ARISTA is just so much fun.
No, but you know, that is actually a great opening line, because as you say, we stand on the shoulders of a lot of people which devised and thought about this technology many, many years ago. And you know, the interesting thing is that not much have actually changed. Well, apart from, of course, the speeds we're working with, the reliability, and of course, the ability to get metrics out of it. But the protocols are the same, aren't they?
They have been for many, many years. Think about just contribution networks, what we've been doing with satellite networks. Yeah. Just think about what Netflix has done. Everybody has done. Everybody's moved to IP many, many years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Playout systems. I remember putting in my first control system back in, okay, I won't date myself, but a few years, at least a couple of 20 years ago or so, that was all IP. I mean, we've had that for many, many years. We're just doing more with it. And I think people were looking for 2110 to be a standard, and it is. It's been out for almost 3 years now, right?
Absolutely,
and so many installations are relying on it.
And that was actually when it became a standard, and there was a lot of implementations before that and earlier on that, before it actually got standardized, which was very, very successful. So I'm not going to date myself either, but I can say that a bit over 20, or did I say 20 years ago, we built the first nice IP-based MPLS contribution network. So again, IP has been with us for quite a long time. It's nothing new, this.
It isn't. And what has changed is, like you said, Simon, the bandwidth.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, we're talking about, UHD being 11 gigs, 12 gigs thereabout, and uncompressed. But we also have the compressed aspect too. So we can get back down to the lower speeds. So what's interesting, though, is that the technology it has evolved. The standards have evolved. The platforms have evolved too.
Yes.
We were just talking to somebody yesterday. We're building out another big network. It's going to be multiple 400 gigs.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good. I just imagine that, but they're looking for 800 gig, and what we're going to be announcing, later on in this year. Yeah. And you just imagine that amount of power, the amount of bandwidth, what you can do with just getting bandwidth out of the way, but also doing it at full scale.
Yeah. No, but you're right. When we basically did the contribution lines, we utilized, SDM lines with, 155 megabit. That was, crazy speeds at that time. And we had even some built-in trunks between some of the main routers of 622 megabit. And that was for us kind of crazy. And, the dream of actually having a gigabit was kind of like, oh, the holy grail. And now, as you say, we are routinely utilizing 10 gig for even long distance trunking. 25 gig is also in the picture, and we do 100 gig with the absolute routine inside the studio. And as you say, we too have 400 gigs in the lab, and now it's being deployed. I mean, and that's only in the last kind of 10 years. It's speed, and also then of course speed and the ability to actually manage that speed, to basically get the proficiency and the abilities to follow the speed. It's not just throwing a lot of packets in there like in data centers.
No, you can't. And we call this no packet left behind, in
Yeah.
fact, is so you have a lot of bandwidth, you have a lot of packets, and you don't, and especially with broadcast, there is no second chance.
No.
Much like with voice that we did, many, many years ago when everybody moved from PBXs to IP or storage moved to IP. Now we're into broadcast engineering moving to IP. And you can't drop anything. So that's what we call non-blocking networks, right? You don't have a second chance. And then you want to be able to get the telemetry out of it too. And that's one of the differences, I think, with IP is it's not only a unifier, it's not only a good transport, it's not only just a good thing from a standard perspective, but you can infer information out of it. You can get the how much packet, what was the traffic rate in, out, what's going through the network, and then that also has the foundation for PTP too. Because if we can analyze that time that goes in and out, we know exactly what the offset is of that traffic, and we can tell the endpoints, hey, time this, do this, and it gives us that ability to do things like lip sync that we didn't have the ability to do before. Because before it's not completely timed, because the older days these switches were kind of slower. Now we can time everything perfectly and get telemetry and get as much bandwidth out there, which opens up new opportunities for people. It's
Absolutely. I'm kind of I say slightly infamous for saying that I truly have misliked SDI for now close to 40 years, because it took us away from that time base in the old analog days. I won't say good old, but at least old analog days, when everything was real time. And it was pretty simple to basically go and synchronize audio and picture. And then, of course, came SDI, where you de-embed and re-embed and blah, blah, blah. And you have to then manually sync the audio in the end to everything. But now, with the IP sphere, we can actually get back to that super low latency with built-in precision, because everything is timed. And that timing information is available at the sender, of course, obviously, but also throughout the switch network at every single port. And also, of course, by the receiver. So it's very, very easy to get all this kind of stuff together again, and you can just pick and choose for what you want. I mean, isn't that kind of cool?
It's really cool, and it enables distributed networking too, distributed capability, distributed workflows, and that's something that we hadn't thought about before. Just imagine if we didn't do IP before the pandemic. A lot of people did, some people didn't, right? They were prepared for it. They were prepared for remote access, prepared for remote production, right? Distributed productions. We've seen a lot of people who have centralized playout systems and then localized systems. There's a lot of new enablement from this as well, meaning that you've got services that are now being delivered where they weren't being delivered, or you've got new sports coming online. Everybody wants to have new content out there. We're just struggling for how much content we want. We've got thousands of channels, but we want even more. And IP gives us the ability to do that, which is fascinating.
Absolutely. And one thing that I want to dig a bit deeper in is, we have all these now new networking technologies. Networks, as we discussed, have been with us for ages, so it shouldn't be something new, but it's been in the realm of the IT guys, the other guys. It hasn't been so much in the realm of the broadcasters. And one thing is that there may be some misconceptions about what a network are. It's not only the transport thingy that's in the middle. It can provide a lot of the services as the services in the network. You may not actually need a server. Let's take like a DHCP, for instance. That can be placed already inside the network. It doesn't need an extra server on the outside.
No, absolutely. So the switches can do a lot of different things. At least, most switches can, right? So they can do DHCP services. DHCP is interesting because we have tier 1001, which is DHCP based. We're trying to get to more of a plug and play type architecture, just like you were talking about, more of an IT centric architecture. We just plug it in and go, and it discovers itself. And this is where the NMOS standards come into play, right? And so we're building up all these different functions to be able to do that, kind of just plug it in, move it around. If I move camera one over to a different studio, I know that I'm on a different studio. We know that if you're plugging something in, that maybe the personality even changes. There's some like audio consoles that when you change the IP address, you get a whole different personality. I mean, you couldn't do that before, right? So it's not just the ability to say, well, I'm IP, it's now what can you do with it? And it's the creative thinking of a lot of the manufacturers that are coming out with just different wild ideas of how to use this. And then the other thing is I don't think people really understand that IP gives you not only the flexibility, but you can do different audio things with it as well. You can have as many languages, and I know there in Oslo, there's how many languages in Oslo? I keep losing track.
Well, we have a lot of diversity in this country. So we have actually 3 official languages, which is supported by the government, and then we have variances around that, which is crazy. So believe me, there is a necessary for a lot of audio channels.
Yeah, exactly. So imagine if I spoke, a different language, and I wanted to turn the channel not just to that particular channel itself, but pick a language.
Yeah.
And that would be it would be amazing because it's personal. It's to me, and that's what IP is giving us. So it's that personalization as well, creativity.
Because, I used DHCP as a very, very crude example, but you have other technologies like LLDP, which means that the network can actually detect, what's actually being connected and vice versa. And that means that you can put a lot of, let's say, interesting both security-wise, but also operational-wise intelligence inside the network. So that when you connect a new device the network never seen before, it will, kind of like halt it until somebody says, yes, he's okay, and put him on the right kind of, routing path to the services that device needs. And, I would say that the network is one of the fundamentals that you can actually base your whole operation around if you do the architecting pretty carefully.
It's a toolkit. So that's part of the ISO 4.1.2 standard is to do LLDP. When you plug something in, you know exactly where it's at, the device name that's at. And then we're doing some interesting things too with what we call Devops. And I don't want to get too techie, or maybe we can. It depends on Simon, how far we want to go down this, right? We've got some smart people out there. Let's keep them smart. So what we can do is when something plugs in, not only DHCP identify it, program it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so we do things with like Ansible or Puppet or Chef. So when we identify it, we program it, and we give that flexibility.
Yeah.
What that does now is it allows you to take a particular device and then use it in different ways at different points in time, or move it around, like you said. And then when you plug it in, it's completely. And we could do other things too. Is when I plug this into a certain location, then I want to start to analyze it. So for example, if you plug in a camera, maybe I want to automatically go to a confidence monitor. So this is the automation stuff that can happen too. But it's just using the things we've been doing in IT for many, many years, as you said.
Yes, it is. And you have a nice. I heard you tell about the fundamentals of the network with the analogy that contains some certain things about pigs. Do I hear you right?
So pigs, is it?
Pigs.
Yes. So we always think of the network as like no packet left behind. We want to have a good found. Oh, pigs. Yes, definitely a pig. So when I think about building a network itself, I think about you're going to build a foundation. And I don't know why it always sticks in my head, maybe because the nursery rhymes when I was growing up. But you know what? You don't want to build your house of sand. You want to build a foundation on there, right? So you want to pick a platform that's truly non-blocking.
Yeah.
And what that means is every packet that comes in goes out in predictable fashion. If we have jitter or latency in there, we don't have that predictable packet pacing that's necessary. It puts more work on the endpoint itself, the receiver side of things. So we call that basically a foundation non-blocking network.
Yeah.
But also now that you have that capability, you can now do things like PTP at scale.
Exactly.
You know exactly what the time is coming in, the exact time going out. You know what the predictability across that ASIC is.
Yes.
And then you can say PTP timing is spot on.
But
so
if I may, I have a little intrusion there, because that demands, if you make a true non-blocking kind of architecture, that demands that you actually make it scalable enough so that you can actually take then full bandwidth in and out of that particular port. You cannot oversubscribe to and keep non-blocking, right?
Yeah, this is a dirty little secret, quite frankly, in the networking industry, is you can't go out and just buy, an off-the-shelf switch. You have to buy something that is purpose-built.
Yes.
And not every switch is created equal.
No.
I hate to say it. People go, how come the switches are so expensive? Well, if you look at the cost of what an SDI router was versus an Ethernet switch, there might be a little premium, but you get capabilities out there. You also get telemetry out there.
Exactly.
But you have to buy something that's purpose-built. And we see this unfortunately, all the time. I
Yeah.
had somebody at NAB last year wagging his finger at me. This 2110 stuff is not going to work. It's not working right. We have this installation on it. I said, well, what switch did you use?
Exactly.
And he told me, and I'm like, well, you started off with the wrong foundation. Back to the Three Little Pigs. They picked the wrong purpose-built thing. We want you to have it so that the network is something you forget about.
Yeah, exactly.
Get to, like we were talking about, Simen, is all the things that you can do with it.
No, but it's so true, because you really, really want to forget about it. You want to have it as a stable fundamentals that never goes wrong. And that, of course, demands a different category of equipment than the standard. The term COTS is very hot these days, because you kind of depict it as off-the-shelf kind of hardware. But people misunderstand that and say that, okay, any PC, any switch will do. And there, of course, is, and have been for many, many years, a huge advantage, even for traditional IT-based systems, to go to a switch manufacturer and models of the right switch, which can actually handle all those peak loads, because they don't aggregate all the jitter. Because as we say, if you start with little jitter, a couple of switch hops later, the jitter will have increased. And that means that if you don't keep that one in check, you'll end up with a huge problem down the line. And that's also been always a good methodology to purchase some real industrial, iron stuff that actually can handle the load.
You're spot on. And then as you have that foundation, which we were talking about 400 gig and then 800 gig, but a non-blocking set of properties to start off with, and then adding in, an operating system that is extensible. Like we have a great integration together, is getting the telemetry out of this, knowing what's happening, to those packets. So you get the real-time telemetry, not like we used to do way back when, which is S&P polling. S&P polling in my head is back to an analog. Is imagine if your phone never rang, right? Imagine if they never came over and you had to go, is anybody there? And you do that every 5 minutes, right? Well, you're never going to get real time, right?
No, not at all. And I remember in the old days when providers, and this is of course in distribution, but they came with triple play. You had IPTV, you had of course internet delivery, and you had IP telephony as well. And of course, their service divisions were kind of happy, because if something went wrong, nobody called because the phone was dead.
Well, that's one way to turn it off. Let's see, we've got no problems. Nobody's calling. Well, wait, the network's down. Yep. A funny story is years and years ago, somebody said I was working on an IT engagement, and we had an issue. And somebody says, well, I'll send out an email. The email system was down. And I'm like, how are you going to do that? You just don't do that. So, but you want to have something that's going to alarm, going to alert, and also get into something of a redundancy aspect too. So IP enabled -7, it gave us that telemetry information. It knew that the phone was ringing. It gives us that real-time information to make decisions. And then if you want to get into more decision-making properties, you decode, and you've got a wonderful product that does the decode. It looks at exactly the packet pacing time. It knows exactly what the offsets are. But imagine if the offsets were completely different and all the time, this would just never work. So like you said, Simen, foundation's key.
Absolutely, and that's why I'm very happy that you're on the show today, and also that you're out there, touting all this knowledge, because people need to understand that without building that foundation, there's slight hope of success, because that foundation is so key. And we have seen that up through the years, even in distribution. This has been, kind of the holy grail of how to make it work. Well, design your network correct, and basically you'll get rid of 90% of the problems. Because in the real world, either it's the core architecture or it is cables. Cables are, a big hassle as well. If you don't do your cables right, well, there's all hell to pay for that decision. But again, architecture. I had this great example, NAP down in Australia, between in Sydney and in what's the other town? It's Sydney and it's Melbourne.
Sydney, Australia, but gosh, I can't remember. It's like I don't recall now.
But it was Melbourne.
It was over in terms of miles. It was over 1,000 miles away, where they had the 2 remote productions. They had basically a central, and then I'll call it kind of a headless OB truck
Yeah.
if you will. It wasn't quite, because somebody has to go out there, like you said. There's always somebody has to plug cables in.
Yeah, it's photographers and some small technical personnel, etc. But there's no producer, there's no picture switcher. Basically, there's no slow motion operators. There's a lot of people which is still back home in the hub.
And that enabled some interesting things. And I remember after the first production that they did, it was the first live. They did some tests, but then they got everybody on the system. And so you have your comm systems, you've got everything going, you've got people talking, but they're all remote.
Yeah.
Now, normally, and I'm sure you've been in an OB truck, there's a lot of angst that happens. I won't use all the words that they use, but sometimes it can get a little heated.
Yeah.
When things don't get done, but there's a lot of pressure. But it went off without a hitch.
Yeah.
And I asked one of the directors afterwards, I said, okay, so how'd it go? Because I was quite nervous. It's a live production, hour show. This is a big sporting event, right? And he said, Robert, there was a little bit of a lag. We got used to that, but there was two interesting artifacts. And he goes, I want to share this with you. And I was, okay, good. So I sat back in my chair. I'm like, okay, he's going to tell me something negative, and I've just got to prepare myself. So I put, my big boy chest on. Okay, tell me what was wrong with the network, right? He said, it was interesting on the comms because we were more polite.
Yeah.
We weren't screaming at each other.
Yeah.
We took time to listen to somebody.
Yeah.
We reacted that in a more polite way. And I was like, well, that's okay. That's interesting. He goes, but the more important thing was, my daughter's 3rd birthday was that day. And he goes, how we travel around?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes we get good hotels. Sometimes we have got, several people in the hotel. We've got to be there at 4:00 in the morning. He goes, I got to be home for my daughter's birthday. My wife was happy. I got quality of life back. And I said, well, you did the production. You were successful and you got quality of life and you were more polite. I'm like, IP's enabling you to be, a little bit more, self-sufficient, and then do more.
No, but it's a very nice and also very touching story, to be honest, because again, it's side effects that wasn't really designed in. It was the obvious side effects of having a much more mature production where people are not stressed, because of course traveling 1,000 miles to do a production, sleeping in some bunk and then going back, next day, it's stressful. And that basically was also, I've been visiting them in Sydney many times, and that was the key. Listening to a production, it was very calm, and that was also surprising because, again, as you say, well, I've been to sport events. There's a lot of F words.
Yeah, they don't mean fix it. Well, they kind of do, but yeah. Yeah. But it's interesting too, because then you can have a meal. You're not living on chips and sodas, and I mean, unless you want to.
Yeah.
But then you have choice.
Absolutely.
You can choose to live on that, or you can choose to just set aside the time, and then you could do more productions. You can be more agile. You can come on and off a production, and then unfortunately, not your best talent are the ones you send out to the big show. Now your best talent can be used more efficiently.
Absolutely, and also again that it provides that fundamentals that when you then do centralized equipment placing, like in these hubs that NAP have, then basically you have these remote islands of then IP trucks, which are basically a bit headless. Then you also have the advantage of then distributed production, because they don't need to be in the hub either. They can actually be then at home doing a lot of these connected to the hubs. And then suddenly you have all these 3 different layers of flexibility that enables you to do the best for each individual production. And if you want to switch that production from one location to another, you can do so. There's not a problem. And so that's one of the advantages.
And then also more fly packs. There's been more fly packs built this year than ever before.
Yeah,
so now you get your wonderful production, your wonderful producers, your wonderful graphics. You're raising the game for all these things that you could tell, you didn't have the A team there. You had kind of the C team there because that's all you could really afford to do, right?
Yeah.
Because you didn't have all those people who were thinking ahead or building the wonderful graphics and the inserts and the bumpers and all that. So it even made these smaller shows a lot more professional, and it gave that sense of now we can do more and do more with less, and have that quality and the quality of experience. And like we were talking about, it's all that matters right now is the quality of the show and getting that content out as quickly as possible.
Yes. And that's you know, that is the name of the game, and I like that we now are seeing the reality behind it and not just all the theoretical kind of contemplation of where this is going. Because every time, the last kind of 2-3 years, we've been talking about, you know, oh yeah, IP is coming, and I say, no, it's not coming. It's here. It's been here for quite some time, and it's actually working very well. And a lot of people are drawing advantage out of it right now. And I feel a bit sorry for those which haven't actually experienced this yet, because this is something that is game changing. In again, that IP networks. You know, it's like the glue all together, and then you have some, you know, storage, and you have some processing, and basically this is it. Because again, it can dissolve both, you know, time and space. Because, you know, with these kind of high-speed networks, it doesn't matter where things are done as long as they're done. And you can use it for, you know, transporting faster than real-time stuff, like huge files. Or you can actually use it for real-time, or you can actually use it for slower than real-time with the, you know, the kind of slow-motion stuff as well. So you can do anything. And if you suddenly then have it on the network, you can do it from anywhere as well.
You know, it's interesting because you were talking about, Simen, just a minute ago about IT and broadcast.
Yeah.
And if you look at where an IT person is and the broadcast engineer is, I think the broadcast engineers, the men and women that are out there every day just bringing us on air, they're like warriors.
Yes,
they have no
they
fear. They can learn anything, right?
They
and
do.
I could take a broadcast engineer with that no fear mentality and
Yeah.
take him from zero to hero within a couple of hours.
Yeah.
IP doesn't have to be one of these weird things that they don't understand. We could just bump them up a little bit, and like you said, it was just taking from SDI to IP, and
Yeah.
how to run the switch is just a small piece of it. It's what else you can do with it, and it's just back to the workflow. Then the
But
IT
you know
guys
that
take an IT person and put them in front of a console and say, "You're going to go live in 5, 4, 3," and watch them kind of, you know, you get that fear, and they're like, am I really going to push the, yeah, and I'm not going to, you know, I do this every once in a while where we push people to do that.
Yeah.
But that's, the broadcast engineering group just does that all the time. So take that non-fearful attitude, give them IP, give them some toolkit, and boom, here you go.
But you know, that is
accelerate.
There's a lot of misconceptions there, because you have, you know, your IT engineer, which basically he's an engineer. And you know, he fiddles with a lot of gear and you know, have a lot of technical experience. But most of the broadcasters, they're not engineers, they're creatives. You know, the guy manning the picture switcher, it looks very technical, but no, he's not really an engineer. He's a creative, you know, doing decision making on how to do this. The same with slow motion operators. You know, they're very technically proficient, but they're not engineers. They're creatives, because they're telling a story. But while you know, how they actually run that scene in repeat, etc. They're very much everybody creative, and that is a different type of attitude. They have absolutely no room for error, and also everything has to be timely, or they can't do their job.
You know, and they're thinking all the time too. They're anticipating. They're thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead.
Yes.
You know, it's not just
Exactly.
camera take one, fade this, you know, fade in black. Yeah. It's like you said, I'm going to do a replay. Okay, I've got 12 different camera angles. Let me cue those in. And it's fun to watch sometimes. Some of these, you know, replay operators, they're just as casual as can be.
Yeah.
But they've got 12 clips in their head, and they're thinking about exactly where they're going to go. Yeah, it's fun, it's fascinating, and that's where the respect, I think, comes in. And if we could just show them that, look, it's no different than what you're doing today. It's just a different transport from a consumable value, and then bump up the broadcast engineering just to build the right toolkit to enable this. You've got a perfect situation.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, it's very true, Robert. And I believe then we can say that it's better to take the SDI out of the broadcaster to take the IP into the IT manager.
I couldn't agree more. And have a good foundation out there. Start with something, back to the 3 little pigs. Start with the foundation that just works, so you can, we have a commercial, Ron Popeil here, set it and forget it. It's kind of an old thing, but just plug it in, go, and then worry about all the other workflow. Think about the creatives, like you just said. What else can you do?
Yeah.
beyond just remote production? What are the new fascinating things that you want to start working on? What are the new tools you want to bring on board?
Exactly.
And then what are the things that you want to think about in the future? We were talking about AR, AI, VR.
Yeah.
Imagine if you could be on the soccer field in the middle of it as if you were a player. Yeah. And that's where things are going.
Absolutely, and again, the foundation here is to have a good foundation, which is very, very true. You know, Robert, we can sit here all evening, and I would be thrilled. And of course, you are invited. The first time we will meet on an exhibition, which will probably be NAB in October. We are going to have a great talk, not online. We're going to do it the old school manual thing, no cameras involved, and because this is very, very exciting stuff. Before I let you go to a day I know is very busy for you, I just want to say that, you know, if we go to point our audience to somewhere with good literature, etc., obviously if you go to arista.com, there will be something.
Yeah, arista.com, that's good, but I'm going to give out my email address. In fact, maybe This is something we can do as a ladder. It's you see my name there on the scroll.
Yes.
It's R Welch, the first initial for first Welch, R Welch at arista.com. Ping me directly. I'm on LinkedIn as well, if you don't remember that. And we're here to help. We have it's not just me. We have Gerard Phillips, we have Ryan Moore, we have broadcast engineers, we have people who've been around the industry for a long time, and we're here to help you be successful. We can't be successful unless you're successful. Again, back to the foundational principles, and that's what Arista is, a foundational principle to help you be successful. So rwelch at arista.com.
That's very good, because I was afraid you're going to say that, you know, and we're not satisfied until you're not satisfied. That is not a good slogan, by the way.
Simen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Robert. We'll repeat this at one time, but thank you for coming on. You have a fantastic day ahead of you. And to everyone else that is tuning in this Tuesday, I would like to say, keep tuned in, because next Tuesday there will be even more interesting news from our IP studio here in the basement of our Oslo HQ. In the meantime, have a fantastic day.